Welcome to This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty, the number one destination for Seinfeld fans. This is episode 111. Today's guest is a writer and producer on some of the most accomplished and well-received shows on TV, including Silicon Valley, Veep, The League, and The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. And of course, he was a writer and producer on Seinfeld for seasons 8 and 9, credited with writing 6 episodes, including The Blood and the Strike, which brought us Festivus. Please welcome Dan OKeefe. Dan, thanks for joining.
Hey, wait, I just realized, do you put a video component up with this, or did I just wave at the radio?
No, we do video. We do video too.
Oh, good. Okay. I didn't just wave at the radio.
Awesome. Dan, what a treat. Thanks for joining us. So take us back. So 1990, you graduate from Harvard. Obviously, you do a lot of work with Leno. And then Seinfeld comes around in 97. Obviously, your first episode was the Pothole. But how did the connection happen with Jerry and the show? How'd you get on board on staff with Seinfeld back in the late 90s?
I wore them down. I exhausted them. In all seriousness, the way the process worked was you sent, or if you were allowed to have your stuff read, you sent just pages of ideas of plots, and they figured that if they were willing to look at your capsule ideas, then by that point they would have already ascertained, I believe, in theory, that you could write a draft, that you weren't psychotic and all that. So I, after much begging and cajoling, because I was unemployed for a year after I did a Married with Children season, but then a new head writer came in and brought her own team in. So I was just drinking bottles of wine and hanging out with my girlfriend, now wife, and just coming up with, I think I sent 80 pages total. I remember because I would walk to Kinko's back when people faxed things, and I would send them every Friday like 5 to 7 pages for little short paragraphs of an idea per page, and most of them were just utter garbage, but a couple of them were Kramer Adopts a Highway, and one of them based on something that actually I told my wife at the time it was just an idea I had, but I did in fact knock her toothbrush in the toilet, and then she used it, and I was afraid to tell her, and then I wouldn't kiss her. Although we did eventually get married, so that that we got and those were a couple of the ideas that apparently Jerry responded to, and so they said, we're going to give you a freelance. But that took something like I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that was like 7 months of almost every Friday sending ideas, because it was Seinfeld. It was this cultural phenomenon, and I was it was very, very hard to get a gig on it. And so they said, all right, we're gonna get you a freelance. And then there was a production pressure, so they ended up compressing my freelance with a freelance of Steve O'Donnell, who had for a long time was the head writer for the original, not the very original, like the Day Show, but Late Night with David Letterman, which was very cool. Although I think I met him once in my life since then, although we technically collaborated, and it came out great, and Jerry liked it. And because that came out well, and I was on set during some of the shooting of it, and I didn't bite anyone or shout anything obscene, I was lucky enough to be asked to be a story editor. I was not actually a producer on Seinfeld at any point. I was too junior. I was a story editor, and then I was promoted mid-year to exec story editor season 9, which I was very excited about. And so that was it. It was just sheer wearing them down so that they would hire me just so they wouldn't have to get more faxes.
And when you say them, at that point, is it just Jerry that's reading those, you think, without Larry there? Or is it other staff writers like a Melman or someone else?
By definition, it was Larry was not there because Larry left after season 7.
Right.
And Schaefer, Bergen, Mandel became the de facto head writers, if not in
That's
name.
what I was wondering. So they were considered, and did you know those guys at Harvard at all? I don't know how the years worked there with you. Didn't they graduate from Harvard as well? Or is that no connection?
They did, and I did know them there. They were actually a little younger than me, like a year younger. And they were some of the people that fortunately I hadn't fully antagonized at college. So, being connected to people who end up working in Hollywood is only a plus if you didn't royally piss them off.
Right.
Undergraduate. Yes. So I wore them down, but mostly I wore Jerry down because he was in charge, of course, and it wasn't like he just showed up as if he were the star. The guy's work ethic was insane. I still have never seen anything like it. We were told going into production, don't make any plans for the weekend. Someone said, what weekend? Someone else said, I think maybe it was Jerry, all of them. And it's true. We worked every single weekend during production and no one complained. It was an honor. And for a 9 a.m. Sunday rewrite, I remember one time I happened to get there early. It was 8:45. He was already there. He was already pacing. Like, where's everybody? So
Wow,
he ran the show.
Yeah, that's season 8, season 9. I mean, he could have coasted in a way, you might say, but he wasn't doing that.
My impression, and again, these are people that I have a slight professional connection to. My sense is that neither one of those guys has ever coasted a day in their lives. So, I don't think they have that gear.
So that was 97. Obviously, you were still a young guy. How did you get to know Jerry? Was it through like the Leno connection? I'm just curious how that all came.
I got to know Jerry my first day working there. I didn't know him at all. I think Jerry did the Jay show when I was only on the Tonight Show for a year and a half. I'm pretty sure Jerry did at least one. He appeared as a guest at least once, but I never met him until I was in the office, having been hired to do a freelance. And during the freelance, I think I said about 5 words to him. So I really only met him when I showed up to work. And I was, it's odd given that I've worked in entertainment for 30 years. Celebrities make me nervous. So I think he didn't know what to make of me until at one point I made him laugh, not on the page, because we were talking about the part, for some reason he was talking about the part of the brain that enables you to enjoy pastry, and I think I said the streusel lobe, and he laughed at that, and then I was like, okay, I'm good now. But yeah, it was no fools were suffered gladly at any point there, and everyone took it very seriously. But it was also the most fun you'd ever have. It was a blast, and I was very, very lucky to be there. And my hair was this color then, by the way. I was like 26. My hair went white at 25. It's genetic. I wasn't very, it's not like I saw a ghost or something. But.
Right. We mentioned earlier before we started how we had talked to a few of the writers who were there, like season 1, early on, and what we got the idea is basically, the idea is submitted. Larry and Jerry like it. They say write the script, and then they get their hands on the script and they do rewrites to it, and they kind of punch it up and things like this. Without Larry there in seasons 8 and 9, did Jerry still handle that responsibility? Was he still going through every script, by himself after it's been handed in by a writer, as far as that goes?
I believe he took passes by himself, but mostly just in the interest of, making up for, for McCartney or Lennon, whichever, leaving the group that he had a lot of guys who were, wings helping out. And so there were many, many different sizes of rooms. There were small rooms to go over ideas that were then approved. You were sent off to make an outline, and the same small room would approve sending you to script. Then in scripts, the Jerry and Jeff and Alec and Dave, I believe, would go through it. But then when people were punching it up, both before the table read and after the table read, it was everyone. People were just throwing jokes in, and there was a monitor, like they're the classic, the way it's done. But yeah, it was very collaborative. But his hand, I will say that my experience there was that it was an incredibly collaborative process, and not out of the goodness of his heart. You had to earn your keep and produce, but also he was in it every step of the way. It's not like he assembled a bunch of talented people and then went to play golf. He right. was, he left, same time everyone else did, 2, 3 in the morning, whatever.
Right.
Cool. So Dan, let's start with the Pothole. Where'd you grow up? Are you, because Phil Rizzuto, obviously we love him here. Were you a Yankee fan growing up, or did you write that piece in with Rizzuto? I always wondered about that.
I'm a huge Yankee fan. I'm from New York. Was born on the Lower East Side, but that idea was one of Steve O'Donnell's ideas. However, I was very excited because I grew up listening to the Money Store commercials and hearing my dad talk about, the 48 or 58 series, I forget which, and all that. The two ideas I contributed to the Pothole were the toothbrush in the toilet and the Adopt a Highway. And Steve O'Donnell contributed the Phil Rizzuto keychain and the other one that I forget because that was a while ago.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of jokes in it, and I wrote scenes of mine. But I was a freelancer, and it was being rewritten by the staff and by Jerry. But it came out great. I was thrilled. I was watching. I think it was on the Tonight Show. He was on the show with my old boss, and he said he was very happy with it. It ended up being the 150th episode. He said he was very pleased with the way it came out. And Jay sent me a telegram saying, congratulations. I still have that somewhere. It was very.
He said it was one of the best he's ever seen in the whole series. So yeah, you should be proud of that one.
Well, I don't know if in retrospect he still thinks that. At the time he said that, but yes, that was huge. That was like everything else of being allowed to be a small part of it. That was a huge honor.
Yeah, I mean, like anything, when a TV show, it's interesting when you think about the writing of it, because there's pieces of it, like you said, the toothbrush in the toilet. That's the idea, right? And that's a funny idea, but then they all have to come together, and there's not just one of those ideas.
It wasn't that funny when my wife found out that it really happened, and that she put a toothbrush in her mouth that had been in a toilet. That was a rough patch, but
right. It's just interesting how they all
they all have
to connect,
together. Yes, that is, and I didn't have to do that weaving for the freelance.
But for the blood you did, right?
What's that now?
For the blood, you had to do that weaving?
Oh yeah, once I got on staff for season 9, then I was involved in it, and yes, the weaving together. Originally, there was a whole other Superman related plot for Jerry in the blood. There's some even weirder stuff, but yes, for that one, for the Strong Box, for all the ones I was involved in, you're one of the weavers.
While we're on the blood, is that a true thing there? The combining of the TV, the food, and the sex, or that's just kind of imagination?
How did you pull that out of your ass? Jesus Christ! Yes, that was another one of those. That was because I had this hippie girlfriend in college who liked to burn a vanilla candle when we were in bed, and it was distracting me, and it was making me hungry. So I extrapolated a little bit, and that turned into that. That was based in reality too. And also that I think that was the hardest I ever made Jerry laugh, and it's still look, the birth of my son, that was a nice moment. Yeah, I'll always remember that. But making Jerry really honestly just belly laugh was probably a little bit more. And it was because I think Jerry asked George, I can't remember if it stayed in the cut. I think it did. What did you tell her? Like you were having sex with her, then you got up and you left to get a hoagie. And he said, I told her I had a bus transfer that was only good for another hour. And that cracked Jerry up. And I was so happy. I don't think they even have that anymore. I haven't lived in New York since 1995. No, 93. But like you used to have to, if you had to get a piece of paper and that enabled you to get on the bus without paying another fare if you'd already been on the subway. So Jerry took us all through it. Like, so you're pitching that he tells this girl, I have to go pay for a subway trip so that then I can use this transfer to a bus, the destination being immaterial, and that she bought it. Yeah. That's my long way of saying, yes, that was something that sort of kind of happened.
Now you can just walk on the bus. They don't have to pay anymore. So do you relate most to George? I mean, like when you were writing, who represented you during the writing? Obviously, like Larry always kind of leaned towards George. Melman actually said he loved writing for Elaine mostly. And kind of the Kramer stuff was kind of the hardest. I'm just curious, of the 4 characters, who do you relate to the most?
I would say I related the most to Elaine, but she was the hardest for me to write for. I got the Kramer and the George stuff came the easiest. I related to all of them. I was always trying to get. There was a story that we ended up, I think because of time, it ended up being cut down so much, which might have been a little hard to follow. But I forgot which even episode it was in. That or even if it was one of my episodes, that Elaine had a friend who was asking her to, in the event that something happened to her, would she raise her kid?
Yeah,
And,
the blood. It's in the blood.
and she didn't think it was. That's what was it. The blood. Okay.
Yeah.
And the idea was, as I recall, originally that she's like, yeah, sure, why not? Nothing's going to happen to you. You're fine. Then she finds out the friend has cancer, and was very definitive. And she's like, oh fuck, I have to convince her I'm a terrible like mother. So basically, she was like smoking crack in front of her. That wasn't it. But that was basically the idea. And in the writing of it and the producing of it, both, it was, the sense was, I don't know, that's a little dark, even for this show. And given the rigor of editing, these 4 stories to, and sometimes 5 to, all spiral into the same point, it was, it might have not ended up quite like that. But yes, I really liked writing for all of the characters. And I may have tried the hardest to come up with Lane stories because it was hardest for me, I would say. But when I got in, that was most satisfying, I would say.
And of these secondary characters, and I just watched the first 2 you did, the Pothole and the Blood, and I don't know if this is intentional or not, but Newman in both episodes really doesn't have any lines up until the very end, and he's just kind of screaming in both. I'm just curious, was that intentional, or am I analyzing this a little?
How could that possibly be intentional? All the factors going, like I'm a junior writer. Like I was the puppet master pulling the strings so that in 2 separate episodes, like 4 episodes apart, he could have no lines until he was screaming inarticulately. No, that was total coincidence. I love the character. He didn't actually, I think in both of them, he had more lines. They just ended up being cut because there was so much great stuff shot with that, at one point, I did not think that the Festivus story was going to last in the strike because there were 5 stories. There was a George and Elaine, a Jerry, a Kramer that were all distinct. And then there was the whole overarching Festivus thing. And I thought we could neatly snip that in editing and save, spare the world my family's odd story. But no, somehow through the magic of Jerry and Jeff and Alec and Dave, they managed to keep all those stories in there. And I still don't know how that happened.
Well, yeah. I mean, since you brought it up, I guess you probably talked about this before. I mean, we know that it's a true story, Festivus, and to be honest, we like the episode and we like the idea of it, but we're not big fans of how big it got as far as like it became like. I don't want to say catchy, but a little bit catchy, right? Did that?
You mean the way people adopted it? Yeah, I didn't see that coming.
You didn't see it coming. How has it affected you? Did you embrace it, or you were like, this is too much?
You gotta understand that was. I've said I don't want. I've been saying this for a while.
Right, yeah.
That was. My father was mentally ill and a drunk, but extremely brilliant. And for whatever reason, he invented this weird fucking extra holiday that was celebrated at random times. It did not have a set date. It was extremely upsetting. It was like borderline child endangerment, and it was not fun. So my brothers and I had this deal: you do not talk about it outside of the house, and we just try to pretend it's not happening. So then we go to college, and we're like, okay, that's behind us. We're done with that. And then because my brothers and I have all of us working entertainment, we're at a party, and my loudmouth younger brother happens to mention this thing in front of, I think it was Schaefer. He's being like, what? And he goes and talks to Jerry. And the next thing I know, Dave and Alec and Jeff are sitting me down saying, hey, Jerry wants to do this in the show. And I'm like, oh, no, you don't understand. That wasn't a pitch. I didn't pitch that. Mark just mentioned that. That's an anecdote. That really shouldn't be in the show. That's craziness. And the show is better than that. And I think it's a bad idea. And they're like, look, it can go in someone's episode. It can go in your episode, or it can go somewhere else. And I'm like, well, if it has to go somewhere, I might as well have my name on it. But I didn't pitch it. I didn't want it to go in. I hoped it would fail and be edited out. And nevertheless, the damn thing survived.
Wow.
And again, and it was based on something. I mean, the reality is far weirder. I have over there like CDs that were remastered from the cassette tapes my dad used to make during the annual recording of this insanity, which is mostly him like screaming about internal Reader's Digest politics in a deep slur while while like my brothers are crying and my mom is telling him to simmer down. And so I wasn't, that was not something I agitated for, quite the reverse. So how do I feel about it taking off? I try to block it out. And you know what? It's open source. Like if there's a guy apparently in Wisconsin who sells polls every year, good for him. I hope he makes $1 billion. I don't want any of that.
So, wait, just so I'm clear, obviously O'Keefe, I'm assuming you grew up with Christmas. Like this was like a separate kind of deal or holiday that he would do every once in a while?
Celebrated. We were culturally Christian. My mom was Quaker. My dad was actually going to be a priest until he got into a fist fight with a priest in the Bowery in 1952.
That's a better episode than
yeah, that should be an episode.
I still don't know what it was about, but in any case, no, we celebrated Christmas. This holiday was just basically a way to celebrate. It was basically an encapsulation of alcoholism and mental illness in one neat little wrapper.
Wow, but in this case, we obviously had the great Jerry Stiller portraying the father. So
he made it fun. Like it was terrifying, obviously, and you understood why George was not in favor of it, but he made it fun, and it was Jeff Schaefer's joke, the idea to give it a poll. That was not the case. The real symbology of it was, more peculiar and not as wholesome as an aluminum pole with a good strength to weight ratio. So yeah, I was as surprised as anyone. I was not a booster of this. I was surprised to get on the air. I am beyond surprised that it seems to be something that has, to some extent, legs. There's still a few people who celebrate it. Good for them. I do not personally. I did my time in that, in the 70s and 80s. But yeah, there you go.
Fascinating stuff. It's interesting what takes off and what doesn't with some of these things. We talk about
like the dinner party. One of my favorite episodes of the whole show was the dinner party. Never gets its due.
The dinner party is amazing. Are you kidding me?
It's brilliant. It's hilarious. The black and white cookie run. People quote that, but the structure of it is fascinating. The jokes all just pop. It's a great episode, and you don't hear of it in top 10 lists of the episodes.
It is. We have it pretty high. It might be in our top 10. I'm going to check right now. To be honest with you.
So speak of that, Dan.
We have it 18, but I definitely could be higher. But we have it 18, by the way.
Yeah. What other? Let's talk about some of the old episodes. Like you grew up on this show right out of college. Seinfeld aired. Like, what inspired you? What are some of the episodes like the dinner party that you really just enjoyed and kind of, I don't want to say modeled, but like inspired you to write some of these great episodes that you wrote?
It's very charitable of you saying that any of the episodes I wrote were great, but I love The Apartment.
Really? Oh, all right.
But to be honest, it was and again, this was a very not an uncommon thing in the early 90s. The one set shows, the Chinese restaurant in the parking garage, were like little Beckett one act plays. They were just perfect little found objects of comedy, and those I would say, those. I mean, obviously the contest that's indisputable, and.
Did you start sending those ideas when you said it took 7 months of bombarding Jerry?
I don't remember exactly. It could have been.
No, I know. I'm just curious. Had it been going on prior to that, like earlier on, or were you not really in the business of writing yet at that point? Like, were you sending like seasons 4, seasons 5? Were you sending stuff in, and you weren't quite there yet?
Seinfeld was 1994, I believe.
So you weren't quite ready.
No, I was a writer on the Tonight Show. Like I had a full-time job. I was
okay. So you weren't looking to get into that
at
realm
that
yet.
Time, I was just like I didn't own any furniture, and all the clothing I owned was Army surplus. So I was like, Hollywood careers are like the NFL. They do not last that long necessarily. Right. I don't know if I'm going to stick here. So I told my girlfriend, "Don't move out yet." I have no, so and I kept showing up looking like a vagrant at the Leno offices, and they tolerated that. So no, I wasn't I only managed to get the green light to send stuff in 1996, and then it took, like I said, months to get. Okay, yeah, Jerry likes a handful of your ideas, 4 of them actually. I don't remember what the other 2 were. And you're going to do a freelance. Actually, I think I have the draft somewhere. I could dig it up and see what the other 2 ideas that were initially approved were. Then it got combined with Steve O'Donnell's, and then it went over well, and I got lucky. I won the lottery. So
yeah, it's interesting. You just mentioned the NFL, and I had wrote down a note here about, they talk about all the time in the NFL the coaching trees, like it's like the Bill Walsh coaching tree or the Bill Parcells coaching tree, and where these guys go on to other things. And I think of it with the Seinfeld tree. It's basically, with Veep and Silicon Valley and these shows, these incredible shows. A lot of you guys that were on that, you mentioned Schaefer and Mandel, Berg. You all kind of came from the Seinfeld world. I don't know the timing of it, but I'm pretty sure afterwards is when all these shows came about, right? Like The League and Veep.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious what, as someone who's a part of that world, aside from just, hey, we all know each other, what is it more that's kind of created all these other shows that have been so incredible? Like, and do you see when you're on the set of Veep or Silicon Valley, do you see Seinfeld's like inner working somewhere, like footprint, I guess, or thumbprint somewhere?
You see the footprint of it all over comedy everywhere.
Right.
The idea that you not multiple storylines together was not a common one when it started. Well, it had been occasionally done before, but making that a signature, that's now, de rigueur. And you see that everywhere, not just those shows. I would just say that it was just very talented people who learned from the best. They got to learn from Larry and Jerry. I got to learn for a year and a half from Jerry and from them. In terms of, I don't know. By the way, the league. Speaking of coaching trees, I don't know. I have no idea what that means. I know baseball and boxing.
You said NFL. I don't know. I threw it out there.
I worked. The league was about fantasy football. But
yeah. The league was great. The league is one of my. All 3 of those shows are 3 of the greatest shows ever.
I don't know anything about fantasy football. I know fantasy baseball. So every time I pitched an idea to Jeff Schaefer, he would have to translate it into football, and then he would try. He used to try to explain the rules of football to me, and I just couldn't get it. Like, I don't know. It's my brain doesn't use that as an operating system. But speaking of the league, an idea that is something weird from my family that I did intentionally pitch was that, the Baba Man episode.
Yeah.
That I wrote. That was a character I invented to torment my younger brother over the phone. We had the game of phone chicken that's in the episode, and he hated it. And I was one because he would hang up because it creeped him out so much. I mean, it really freaked him out. And that was the same brother who opened his yap about Festivus, so he got what was coming to him. And then I put it on TV.
Oh man, yeah, that's funny. And obviously, speaking of Seinfeld, you also wrote for Listen Up.
I did.
Which, another sports show. That was the connection with Tony Kornheiser and Wilbon, right? That was the association.
Yeah.
So what was that like working again with Jason Alexander?
Oh, that was great. And Malcolm Jamal Warner was a dream. That was great. It just, if it had focused more on that, it might have lasted longer. I had a great time on that show. I think, as I recall vaguely, it was on the bubble. It was almost picked up for another season, but it wasn't, unfortunately. But yeah, I had a great time. And Jeff Martin created it. He's a great guy. Kenya Barris was on it. David Litt, a lot of really talented people.
Now, I read in a book about Seinfeld. I think Andy Robin talks about he hated the junior mint. One of the greatest episodes ever in our mind. Any of yours that you wish you could have back, or you cannot believe it gets such great play, or you love them all?
Did we not just talk about Festivus for like 10 minutes?
Well, that was more an idea versus, I
think we got our answer on that one.
Yeah, I guess so.
An episode? No, like the ones I there are things in all the ones that I was credited or co-credited on that I was happy with, and stuff that didn't come out the way I hoped. But is there like one particular episode that I'm like, Uh, I mean, if they're no, because there's stuff in all of them that I really like, and there's obviously the episode that contains the thing that was a dagger to my heart was Festivus, but
And you were around. We always like to talk about the finale. It's kind of a polarizing topic. People love it, hate it. Through the years, I got a greater appreciation for it years later, for sure. But
Yep.
what was that? What was that like? I mean, Larry coming back to the set. Like, how different was it than the
It
year?
was like Jordan coming back to the Bulls, but except they're both Jordan. I mean, it was amazing. Like everyone, other than I think like Jeff and Alec and Dave, just sort of like sat back and watched. It was magnificent. And yeah, people were, because it was a wrap up, people kind of forgot what the show was about. And I think it's aged well, that yeah, these are horrible people, and you enjoyed them being horrible, and people somehow thought that at the very end of things they were gonna hug and or learn. Well, no, and I think that in light of the anti-heroes of the golden age of peak TV, which has closed recently, in light of that, it's like, oh yeah, I get what they were. I like the finale. I mean, so there you go.
Yeah, I agree. I really had no problem with the finale. I think a lot of the complaints came from people who were tuning in just for the finale, and they were like,
yeah, you know what? Sometimes people are just wrong. Like Game of Thrones, that final season was great. The people complain, they're wrong. It's okay. Some people are wrong, and that's okay. That was fine. Now those episodes were crazy expensive, so they didn't get to do a 10. They had to do 7. But that heel turn was coming 3 seasons away. And in the same way, if you had given a Big Blue a data set containing all the Seinfeld episodes and said, can you predict a finale from these people behaving in these selfish, peculiar manners, it might have been something like what ended up.
Right. That's a good point. It sort of, it encompasses it perfectly. And that's what a finale really should do. And especially on a show like Seinfeld, where I talked about this before, we talked about the finale. A lot of people,
your background is the set. I just noticed that. See, my eyes don't work very well. They're essentially ornamental.
Yeah. Oh, a lot of TV shows finales get sentimental. That's what they do. It's a goodbye. It's everyone crying at the sets closing. But Seinfeld never was that show, so it couldn't be that show for the finale. Therefore, it did what it does best, which is just like, here's what we got. These people, and this is what they did, and it was fun. It was good. It wrapped it up nice. I liked it personally.
Yeah, like people, even if they understood this is what the show is, I guess there was just a sense everyone had unvoiced that, oh yeah, but when there's a finale, they're gonna nod, they're gonna nod and wink towards some affection. Why
exactly? Yeah, why would they do that now? It doesn't make any sense.
So Dan, how we talked to a lot of writers and guest stars, and I said it's kind of such a close knit kind of group.
And Klosterman, who's that is the best get I've seen. That's awesome, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
That's off to that. That guy's a force.
Which one was that? I missed you.
Klosterman.
Oh, Klosterman. Oh,
big fan.
Klosterman, I'll throw it out there for our loyal listeners. Klosterman's numbers are through the roof. Like, he's had more listens, downloads than anybody that we've had on, and we've had some pretty big people on, I thought.
Yeah, who would you rather listen to, him or me? I'm going with him. I interrupted you. What were you saying?
No, well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Liz Sheridan and Estelle. I mean, they were in your episodes. I'm just curious. I'd love to hear any stories you have about the two wonderful mothers of Seinfeld.
They both were delightful, incredibly professional. They absorbed rewritten lines on the fly with grace, and they got them right, and they hit their marks. I mean, they were just pros, and that's a huge compliment. Now, like most people on that show, they were pros. They weren't my buddy. And that wasn't their job, and it would have been weird. They were extremely warm and brilliant women, and they're greatly missed. But I'd be lying if I said that I knew them well. Now, after every taping, we used to go to Jerry's Famous Deli in Studio City, and I believe it after an episode or two. I think actually I had some chicken soup next to both of them at one point, and they were delightful. But that was 20 something years ago, and I don't remember what was specifically said. I just remember the impression that they were great, and so was Jerry Stiller. They're all greatly missed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's we tried to get Liz on, right? But I mean, obviously she wasn't in good health, but the it's interesting. We talked about it earlier. I mean, you came in season 8, the first year without Larry. I'm curious, from someone who you weren't there with Larry, but you probably can get a sense of that sort of changeover. And we like to look at the Seinfeld show as basically almost 3 parts. It's, Larry Charles and Tom Sharon's leave, and then Larry David leaves. So there's almost like 3 different shows in a way. There's 3 different tones at all 3 of those kind of runs. Yours being the back end without the Larry David there. What was the sense of the whole set at that point? Was it let's get behind Jerry? Was it we're a well-oiled machine? Was it we're going to do our own thing because we're not Larry? Like, let's kind of carve our own niche here. Let's make our own voice heard. Was there anything like that talked about or unspoken maybe that kind of got felt by the staff?
I mean, what I felt, the feeling I got was, we're painting the final corner of a Picasso. Don't fuck it up. I was just like, this is a landmark. This is even the greatest situation comedy ever made. Do not let the quality slip. And that's why, I as I understand it, Jerry walked away from More Money Than God for final season because he cared enough about it to not let the quality slip, wanted to go out on a high note. The sense I got was there was not, we're pivoting to this, we're pivoting to that, because I frankly disagree. I mean, I know that there were tonal shifts when Larry Charles left and Tom Sharon's left, but there were also tonal shifts when Peter left and came back and stuff, and there when Jeff and Alec joined and stuff, and so. But those were, kind of microtones. Overall, the sense I got when I got there was, maybe I was talking to myself, was this is harder than winning the lottery. This is the luckiest thing that will ever happen in my life. And, do not shit the bed is the sense I got. At least that's what the voice I was hearing in my head was, this is an amazing show that's been around for, 7.5 years before I got to hitch a ride on the last act of it, and just, pitch some ideas that are funny, write some drafts that work, come up with some jokes that are solid, and then, stay as late as everyone else and get it done. And
wow.
It was a blast. It was that and Silicon Valley are the most fun I've had in my life.
We had Suzanne Cryer on as well. We had Suzanne Cryer.
Yeah, love Suzanne.
Yeah, she's great. The Silicon Valley is an amazing show. It's really, I mean, it's so well written and so well cast, and everything about it, the acting, the writing, it just fits perfectly every single time. Mike Judge, is obviously a genius,
and Alec Berg, who is mentally always, playing chess with death on some lonely Swedish beach. It was really hard to make that show, but it was so satisfying to do it. It was, there wasn't really a serious show taking on that culture. So there had to be a tremendous, none of us, it's not like we were coding other than Mike.
Right.
So we did a tremendous amount of research but it was, it was like Seinfeld. It was really hard, but satisfying work. And it was a blast.
Well, we had the fake Alec Berg on Mark DiCarlo, but so I guess just to cut with the vibe on this, listen, everyone we speak to, it's like, they don't have enough great things to say about Jerry and obviously Larry as well. But like, was it competitive on the set with you guys? Like trying to get these scripts into Jerry, like, or were you guys more like family and buddy, or was there some kind of, give us any behind the scenes kind of stuff about competitive nature of
the writers?
Yeah.
As I recall, we all gave each other shit all the time, but it was a writer's room, and there was a sense of, at least my sense was, keep your head down, because I was, one of the newest, most newly minted guys there. And sure, yeah, there were people got very heated about, particularly in some of the rewrite rooms, about what would work and what wouldn't work. But no one ever threw an actual punch, so it's all good.
But Jerry, at that time, Jerry had final say. Was that the right or?
Well, yeah. I mean, Jerry always had final say. It was Seinfeld. It's his name,
right?
At no point did he not have final say. Now, did he? And it all, the way the ship worked relied on, if he didn't decide, if he was unsure, then Jeff, Alec, and Dave would make a case and try to convince him something. But yeah, he always had final say.
Yeah, Jeff.
I'm trying to remember actually, because I just remember how much fun it was. I mean, day to day, there were some frustrations of scripts that didn't work on the floor the way we thought they would, stories that had to be excised in favor of other stories. But yeah, I mean, I remember someone daring Andy Robin to do he for some reason he thought he was going to be immune to that gallon of milk challenge, that your stomach can't absorb more than a certain amount of lactase. So even if you will invariably vomit if you drink a gallon of milk in an hour. And he did, and he, so I mean, and stupid stuff. There was a balcony that was falling off the back of the building that people would smoke on, and at some point clearly it was going to collapse, but no one thought that they were going to be on it when it was collapsing. Yeah, it was just Building 5 on the Radford lot, Studio City. It was.
And in those that last year, did Julia, Jason, Michael? Tell us a little bit about those guys. Like, did they ever say, "Hey, this isn't me," or did you guys ever kind of collaborate on how they were portrayed, or did that not happen?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, now and then something wouldn't ring true, not just with Jerry, but with one of them. And and one of the actors that you just mentioned would say, I don't think I would say that, or this feels wrong, or this feels weird for my character, or how about this? And they were great at improv in addition to in addition to delivering the material as written. So what were we going to say? Don't do that. Yeah. And so they ran with stuff. In some of my episodes, some of the best lines just sort of came out of them trying different things, or, they would say this one doesn't work. So we had at all times to be ready to pitch alternate jokes on the floor. I mean, the original version of the line, and as I rained blows upon him was, and as I raised my fist in anger, I realized there had to be another way. And then, I could tell he wasn't, entirely behind it. So I said, well, what about, what if it were, as I rained blows upon him, I knew there had to be a better way. As if he already was beating the shit out of the guy. And I was like, oh yeah, that's funnier, because that shows just that he's, what a loose cannon the guy is.
Yeah. And you had mentioned Andy Robin a minute ago, and we were hoping to talk to him soon as well.
He left Hollywood and went to medical school.
Yeah, we got a hold of him. We're hoping to have him on soon.
Him and Cavett.
Yeah, him and Cavett together, which leads me to a show like The Frogger, where the crediting always fascinates me with these things, right? Story by, written by, and from what I've gathered, it's basically if you have an idea within that show, you're going to get credit somewhere along the line. It seems like for the most part, but
not always.
How that works, like with partners and sort of let's just think of Frogger, if you remember, it's because Cavett and Robin are involved as well. So maybe how something like that comes about, where it's that collaborative writing. I'm always curious how that works.
Team that then looped in both me and Steve Coren.
Yeah, how does that come about?
Maybe Coren had a very similar idea at the same time they did and pitched it, and one of the stories in it came from me. And then when we were rewriting it, or when we were putting the script together, I think we might have divided up scenes, and I wrote a few of the scenes before they were rewritten by everyone. To be honest, I have no idea. It's lost in the fog of war. I mean, obviously people liked the episode. It came out pretty good. That shot, oh my God, that took so long. The only shot I remember that took the shot in the Pothole that I recall, the toilet's eye view. Andy Ackerman set up a toilet on a pedestal, with a glass, and put a camera underneath it so you could see the toothbrush coming down. That took like 4 hours to do. And then the Festivus dinner, I think, took like 7 hours to shoot the whole thing because there were so many pieces to it.
Right.
But the Frogger, in terms of just the sheer danger of the shot, I mean, that was, I think, was it a helicopter? I don't even remember. It was nuts how they got it.
There was an overhead view for sure.
It was one of those gigantic cranes that you use, primarily for establishing shots in action movies, and because that shot still amazes me after all this time.
Dan,
I don't know. I don't remember how. I mean, how credit works in Hollywood is like, how money works when you're divvying up a restaurant check. It's mysterious. It bends the laws of physics. I just know that it was primarily Andy and Greg, but Steve and I had a little to do with it too. But then again, everyone did. I mean, some of the best jokes in that were Jen Crittenden's, some of them, and Jerry's and Dave's, and
more importantly, Dan, was your wife happy that Kristen Davis pretty much portrayed her, I guess, in the Pothole?
I do recall that once that was actually part of how I got out of not having her be too mad at me, was that, this gorgeous actress from the city is like, oh, well, I guess I can't be too mad because, So there was actually a sense of that. That actually helped save my ass.
I mean, that's the beauty, the casting of Seinfeld. I mean,
Mark Hirschfeld, the magic of Mark Hirschfeld. That guy,
one of our favorites.
Like, I'm glad he's one of your favorites, but in terms of, it was alchemy. Like sometimes he would cast the guy from Colin's Sleazy Friends in The Strike to play the guy at the Off Track Betting. And as I recall, I think maybe it was Cavett. Somebody was like, I don't know, man. It's like a public access, like, quasi porn show. Is that really? But he was great in that part. He played an authentic New York dirtbag, which is the highest dirtbag. And it came out great. And he was hilarious. So Mark's casting was perfection. It was a joy to watch the casting sessions.
Yeah, well, be remiss. What is it about these Harvard guys? You guys all sort of came. There's so many of these great writers that came out of Harvard and went on to different things in comedy, and I'm just fascinated by that sort of fraternity and sort of if there's, from an outsider's perspective, it seems like it is a fraternity, almost like you're a lot of you know each other maybe, or things like that. Is that true, or is that just how it's perceived, or is there something there where you guys are sort of connected by a common thread that sort of has brought this all these great shows?
I mean, most of the people who come out of it don't go into comedy. They go into other areas.
Right. I'm curious.
They're bankers.
When you're at Harvard, do you see that difference between those people that are going to do that and the people that are going to do
there a billion years ago? Like I was instructed I was going to go to law school because that was the career that had been chosen for me, and so I was told I was going to be a lawyer. And in fact, I wasn't allowed to watch TV growing up, so it did not seem like an option. Then I started hearing rumors. Oh yeah, I hear this. They're working at Letterman, and I didn't watch almost any television, in college. So I wasn't really aware of that world. And my first job was I was a junior editor at the National Lampoon, which actually hated the Harvard Lampoon because the name was licensed from them and they thought they were a bunch of snot-nosed kids. And yes, it was started by some Harvard Lampoon guys in 1969, but that was a long time ago. And I thought my dad was an editor of the Reader's Digest 35 years. I thought, okay, I'm going to be an editor of the National Lampoon for 35 years. Fired 9 months later in the recession of 91. So, I mean, is there a fraternity? It gives you an opportunity that, like a couple other places, like the Onion and Emerson College, and there's a bunch of programs that all give you a chance to fail early and learn how to do, how to take the first steps towards doing some kind of comedy. So in my experience, you develop a lot of skills if you do the Lampoon, if you're lucky enough to get on it. But, also having a healthy sense of not being an overdog helps you.
Yeah, and here's the thing, Dan. Like, however you grew up, whatever was Harvard. I mean, we're just glad that whatever was in you brought that persistence. Yeah, that 7 months you talked about, and then you had that special run with Seinfeld. So I mean,
It was fantastic.
and it's led to so many incredible things. So this has been a blast, kind of going down memory road with you. We can't thank you enough for.
Thank you guys for still being interested in this after all these years.
Thanks, Tim.
I never get tired of talking about the show. I get a little tired of talking about the Festivus thing sometimes, but that's only because of my pre-existing condition with that.
Yeah, we thought about not bringing it up, but
I had the idea of not even mentioning Festivus once his entire interview.
I would have been fine.
I know. I'll cut it out. Maybe we'll cut it
by the way, the worst thing ever published was that ass rag book I wrote. I got offered some money to write a book, The Real Festivus, and they're very nice people, the publishing house. And I was like, "You are so kind. Thank you for your interest. I don't want to ever type that word again." But then someone else was writing a book,
right.
And I was like, "You know what? Fuck that. I'm going if someone is going to, wring some more money out of my, my childhood trauma, then it's going to damn well be me, or at least I'm going to get paid a little bit." So I only wrote it out of spite.
I love it. That's even better. That's a Frank Costanza move too.
There's an actual it's Jerry. Wasn't it Jerry returning a shirt out of spite?
yes.
Yeah, but also moving to Del Vista out of spite,
That's
I believe, was
That's
another one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Spite is, Spite is an emotion you should not. It's very healthy.
Larry carries it into the Spite store on Curb.
I know. I recall.
Spite, yeah. Wonderful, man. Thank you so much.
Jeff is now running that, and I got to say, the league, great show. That Jeff created. And Dave is a great show that Jeff created. And Alex created Barry. So basically they created Dave Barry, the comedian, together.
Barry, that's right.
Dave did something harder, or at least as hard, which is taking over Veep, a show that had been run by a Brit about American politics, of the brilliant Armando Iannucci.
Yeah.
And keeping it at the same quality, but also acknowledging the reality that American politics had degenerated far beyond where it was when the show started. Like that to me seems hard, like almost harder than coming up with something out of nothing, taking an existing battleship and turning it around and turning it into an aircraft carrier. So
yeah, the writing on that's incredible too.
That was so much fun.
I love
that.
it.
That was, and again, I'm the Sandman. I come into shows and help them ease into the grave. I was there for the 7th season of Veep, the final season. That was just a blast. So great.
Awesome. This was a blast too, man. Thank you so much, Dan.
Lovely to talk to you guys anytime.
Yeah, we really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
All right, and ask Andy Robin about the drinking a gallon of milk thing, because he was a brilliant guy. He's a doctor now. He should have known better.
Will do.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, Dan.
Have a great night.